All right. Welcome, everybody. We were, I'm a little out of it. I had a little cold. Jason and I are hanging in there, doing pretty well today. So glad to see you all here. I'd like to call the Moab City Council meeting to order on March 24th at 5:30 p.m. We'll start with the pledge. And Michael, if you would lead us in the pledge, that'd be great.
Got excited. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, we'll start with our 26-27 budget workshop. As you all are aware, last meeting we had the police department. Who else did we do that?
We had police and utilities last time.
So this week we're going to be talking about administration budget, the community development office budget, and public works. And we are our next meeting we will be talking with Parks and Rec because that's a pretty big budget, and we didn't want to take up too much time at this meeting.
Yeah, and we'll have CIP, wrap tax, some that we can go through pretty quickly in vehicles as well.
Tonight?
No,
Next week.
next week.
Okay. Or next meeting.
Next meeting.
All right, so we'll just start with the budget. And who's up first? Admin?
Alexi's gonna run admin.
Lexi Vaughn, she's
Admin.
first.
So I'm going to go through the administration budget. That includes administration, recorder's office, treasurer, human resources, and then there are a few budgets within those departments as well. All right, so a brief summary to start with. Highlights, this budget is a little less than $5 million. There was a 9% increase among all of the budgets collectively. So that includes personnel and operation expenses. And then do you want to talk salary and benefits?
Yeah, so just a quick reminder, I know we talked about it a couple weeks ago, but what we're kind of expecting for salaries is about a 7%. That's for COLA and merit increases, and then the 10% for benefits based on the rising costs. So that's just kind of a reminder of that before we get into what each department has for increases.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each of these departments and the budgets and them. If you have questions, let me know. Starting with human resources, this budget has largely stayed flat. There are some changes like professional and technical. You'll see this in a few of the other departments as we go through. Software was moved to the IT budget because it's used by city staff outside of the department as well. So software that's used citywide has been moved. So we're going to see that, I think, in the next slide when we get to the IT budget. But that affects human resources, treasurer's office, and recorder's office. The operating budget is down in this department.
Salaries and benefits are up. Salaries are up 6.24%. There is a frozen employee in this department, and then benefits are at the expected 10%. So it stayed pretty steady.
Okay, moving to the recorder's budget. This one, again, we see the same thing with professional technical and the software moving. The information technology IT budget is the second one here. And then you can see that the software is showing up in that budget instead for these other departments. Let's see, other notes, the special departmental supplies, in case that's of interest, is covering the cost of checks for account payable. And then there are still some services in the professional and technical category. The reporter budget for the operating non-personnel expenses is also down, although the IT budget expectedly has increased because some of the software is moved there. We don't have an election this year, so we don't have costs in that section.
So we did see an increase in salary and benefits in this department. It is higher than the 7%. It's due to an off-cycle increase that we made to handle kind of the compression that was happening amongst some of our departments and our department heads. So there was an off-cycle that did happen in this. So it's a 1% increase across that department for both salaries and benefits.
Right, next up's treasurer. Again, same thing with software we see here. There was also a note that bank handling charges are something that increases year to year, but it's not a cost that we can avoid. Overall, the budget is pretty close to flat, a little up, but the operating budget is down.
And this is the same thing with this one. We did see a little bit higher increase here, 18% for salaries and 8% for benefits. This again had to do with the compression issue that Michael and I were addressing.
All right, this one's got a little more going on as far as changes go. So this is the admin budget, which used to be separate, 3 separate budgets. It was an administration budget, a communication budget, and a sustainability budget. And those mid-year were combined to be just one. That does create some differences year to year because we're not comparing apples to apples based on that combination of departments. Other things to note here, there is a specific budget for communications that's still in here for advertising and social media. Pays for ads, social media, other advertising that we do as a city. There's also some changes in professional and technical year to year. Part of this is because it includes projects for sustainability strategic initiatives. Depending on the year, depends on whether we have projects in that budget. And then it also includes consultants and lobbyists.
So I was gonna touch on that really quick. We have 2 lobbyist contracts. One of them is coming out of admin and the other one's coming out of general. And I've left them like that for now because that's the way they were previously. And it would show even bigger increases to move them around. But I do want to consolidate those 2. And that's a total of about $145,000. But Lincoln Hill is in the admin, Bennett Group is in general. And then I also have some resources in there for some finance director services, third-party services.
I can't make go.
Okay.
There's also the other category. I believe that is some of the employee appreciation, different types of expenses there that increase to reflect how much we've been spending in past years on that. And grant expenses, this is also sort of a department unique one for sustainability. Right now it includes $40,000, but it's essentially a match, $10,000 to a grant that we're going to apply for, which would give us an additional 30. So it would be dependent on us getting that grant for us to spend it. And actually 10,000 of it would be coming out of city budget. The other 30 would be from the grant if we were to receive it. Overall, in this department, the operating budget is down. And if we excluded the potential grant, which is dependent on receiving it, it would be down 33%.
And so as you can see on this one, your salaries and benefits are a lot higher than what we expected. But again, that was because we combined those departments all together.
And did you mention that those departments were in another area? So they didn't come from admin, they came from community development. So we moved, you did mention that.
Yeah, but yeah, Alexi mentioned that at the beginning. Yeah.
But yeah, that's
Right.
so they wouldn't have shown up here previously.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we have a few more budgets that are also under admin, general budget, attorney, and elected. Most of these are pretty flat.
Yeah, so general, I have a couple of things on general really quick. We've got the travel and food in there for generally we do one party per year. That's where that is coming from, and we usually do that around the holidays. And I also already mentioned the Bennett Group is coming out of here. Everything else is pretty much the same. It has not gone up except for in our general insurance, which we have budgeted just a little bit more. It just depends on what kind of claims we have in this coming year. So. Oh, and then the attorney. Really quick, the attorney, I just bumped him up 3%. We did have a recent charge under the prosecution services, so we had kind of an uptick in that. I may need to modify that line as far as the resources required there, but I feel pretty comfortable about everything else there. And then under elected, this is where we have benefits and travel and things like that for the elected. And as you can see, it's pretty much the same.
All right, the summary of this is the big changes where the admin communication system sustainability were combined into the admin budget. And then we saw some shifts based on software being moved to the IT budget. Overall, the increase among the budgets in admin were 9% increase. There's a 23% increase in personnel and a decrease in operating. Are there any questions?
Questions?
Could you tell me, the IT again was which, like a bunch of different departments at IT and then it was all put into one?
Yeah, so our main software, Polaris, was split between HR, recall, and treasurer. But it's something that's used citywide. So the decision was made, instead of splitting it three ways, to take that out and put that into the IT budget.
So another thing about the IT budget is that under professional and technical, we're using an IT service now. And they've informed us that they are going to be raising their rates. So some are put in that line, how much it would be if we went with them with the raised rates. We think it's a little bit too much, but we know that that's the worst case scenario. So we're going to budget for it. We have an IT RFP, a request for proposals, that is going out by the end of the week. And we're hoping we can get that number down and we can get it closer to what our previous budgets were, which will be about $150,000 less than what we're showing there.
Okay, that was my next question, was like, if it ever goes out to RFP. So.
Other questions?
This was a helpful explanation, because I was trying to figure out, and I was able to figure out a few of the salary and benefit moves, and some of the increases. I was curious about the big jump in elected telephones. Is that?
I think it's just a matter of cost. I'll have to, can you bring that up?
Yeah.
Where's that at?
It's
Like
the third
$1,000.
section here.
Telephone.
They went up to 1,500.
Yeah, do you know why we bumped that up 3 times? What the actual is? I'll take a closer look at that. I don't think there's anything as far as like a bunch of new phones or anything. I believe we just maybe bumped it up because of what the trend was and the cost of diesel fuel. I don't. So I'm just kidding. I blame everything on diesel fuel, but we'll take a look at that and adjust that if necessary. But there wasn't anything like new in there for new phones, or I mean, new phones come with the program that we have.
Thanks. Yeah, and then I think you mentioned it briefly with travel, food, and with general office expense and supply. I think, yeah, I was looking for clarification on like when we decide what is driven through, because I'm assuming like staff lunches, quarterly staff lunch would come through travel, food for admin, or is that also in general?
General.
Just trying to understand all of it.
Now, that's also, there's several things that go with general that we are trying to plan for. One of them, let's see here. It was an admin this last year, but there was at the party, there was, as this is typical, this happens most every year, there's a $50 gift card that employees got, and that comes, I think I wanted to move that into this budget as well. It wasn't budgeted last year, and we ended up using some other resources to take care of it. So it fell under a budget, but I wanted to make sure it was captured in this coming year. So that's why we see the increase there.
Thanks. And then Danny, can you explain a little bit more what compression means?
I can, yeah. So compression, when we look at like positions, one of the things we looked at this year was the leadership team and our supervisors across the board to kind of see where everybody fell. And we found that there was some numbers that were not in line with where they should fall. We had some compression where we had some non-supervisor employees that were pushing up and sometimes overlapping what our supervisors were making. And so that's that compression point that we had to make an adjustment to bring them in line with everybody else.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Next, we
Thanks,
have
Alexi.
community development.
Just another clarification. Those telephones are for landlines, the one that we were looking at.
No.
They are cell phones. Okay, yeah. Okay, that sounds good. I just wanted to make sure I was talking about the right thing. Those are, okay. Thank you. Gotcha.
All righty, I think we're ready. Good evening, council. Of course, you're the Community Development Director. Walking through the items tonight, we're going to be covering a couple divisions within the Community Development Department. So the structuring on this will hopefully make a little bit of sense, at least with this initial slide. Community Development being kind of an admin component of the, Community Development Department. So that's going to house a number of employees that service the three divisions, think about that way. So within that, we have planning, building, and engineering. So we have the department as a whole, and then community development in this instance is myself, our community development admin assistant, and our code assistants, or formerly code compliance specialist. So within the operational budget, we're having what is perceived a pretty significant increase here, which makes sense because not only through the operational capacities of staff, but through our audit of the three divisions, we pulled a number of services and budget items into what should be housed as the department whole. So when we're seeing this increase here, it's because we're removing it from the divisions for the most part. But this department was created within that 2025. So we're operating off a relatively recent development of how we're structuring that budget. Moving into where we're proposing now.
So, and just gonna jump in on that, Corey, real quick. One of the things to look at this when it's going up this far, he did mention there are 3 employees in this department. Prior to this year, there was 1. So it was just a reallocation of FTEs. They aren't new, they just removed from other departments. So you'll see some of the departments that are gonna go down, and that's why this one went up so much with salaries.
Yeah, when we get to our planning division, we're going to see a pretty significant decrease there, which will make a lot of sense. But generally speaking, that's the operational side. And so speaking to some of the changes that we're seeing on the right-hand side of the screen, again, relocation department staff and supporting budgets to support those staff, consolidation department supplies and technical services, engagement with some of our plans, as well as the legal support for some of those plans falls into that. Establishment of an abatement budget, which has been variously housed over the last several years. So we're housing a modest in-fund budget for that abatement process. And then consolidation, like I said, of technical services, establishment of a department vehicle, and permitting software housing under the admin component. And then Danny, anything else?
Yeah, with the 2 FTEs that were moved, we talked about this last meeting where we had 1 FTE moved out of police. So you guys kind of saw a decrease there. That this is where it landed, was here in community development. And then we also moved the admin assistant from planning department over into CDD, which is the increase for salaries and benefits in this one. There were no other odd things here.
Perfect. So moving on to engineering. So just south of a 10% increase on the operational budget side. Within the changes that we're looking there, we were relatively pretty flat. There are some department specific supplies necessary for accomplishing some of our technical services. One is aerial survey support systems, and then just certifications and maintenance of our credentialed staff.
So for salary benefits in here, you're seeing an increase that's pretty significant. One of the things we found we were going through and doing this comparison is that we actually had a full FTE that was missed in last year's salary budget. So good news is we were able to still come out okay in the budget because some other stuff wasn't spent, but it does look like a much bigger increase because that's now being reflected here. Benefits are the same reason.
All right, moving into building. Again, pretty relatively flat change over time with our operational budget here. Specific changes within this budget are again pretty minute, but we do have a 3-year recurring required supplies element as far as our code book update. So it's a price tag as far as building goes. Compared to other departments, divisions, that's not very much. But that's the one effective change that we've seen there.
Yeah, kind of explain the salaries only going 2.95% in here. I know it's on the slide, but just to explain that, when we did the budget amendment and we took an FTE from Public Works and moved it over here where it was needed, instead of moving 6 months, I moved 12 months of salary over. And so there's going to be extra in this year's budget that'll be in part of our fund balance that goes forwards. But that's why this looks so small. It's because that should have only been 6 months.
Alrighty, into planning. Nearly 100% reduction in operational costs. So yeah, a lot of what we were seeing in that CDD admin absorbed many of those components. So now we're purely to an administrative operational perspective of 2 employees in the planning division. So within that, we did a pretty significant budget audit amongst all the divisions. This one was formerly the division that maintained the department lead attributes. So there are a number of major elements we pulled into CDD that were originally housed under the planning director, who is now will in the future be a planning manager. And again, the relocation of all those services and department level subscriptions, plans, and everything else.
And then this also shows the transfer of that FTE over to CDD. Benefits looks really huge. This is just kind of shows the picture of what benefits cost on an employee. So it's a very small division to start with. So when you pull out a full employee, it's pulling out their full benefit load, which is the reduction of the 65%.
And then this will just give framing as the overall full department. So not that community development asterisk, but the full department. So we're sitting about 4.25% change over the last previous year budgets. We've maintained pretty thoughtful requests as to what's needed and required. And so that's all I have for you.
Questions?
I have a few. So I was able to track that a little more closely with CDD, and across the board. Yeah, department is not going up that much. Full change was like $12,000 for that. So I am monitoring that, but did have some questions about and I saw you had a couple of them listed, but engineering, professional, technical, I think there's across a few of them. Maybe it's just them. No. Professional and technical across kind of both CDD and engineering. I was curious if those are is that like code rewrite? I saw you had
Yeah, happy to speak to those. If we want to stay with CDD for the moment. So the CDD, as far as the admin CDD, professional technical, we have housed what is going to be a carry through. I want to use the right terminology here, but carry through for Kenyon Keys, who's our land use code update consultant. So we're moving those funds into CDD where they were previously in planning. In addition to that, we're accommodating for what will very likely be the downtown adopted plan. So that's what we're budgeting for. Usually that's a standing and maintained operational budget for professional technical. That may include everything from services from planning specific legal services when we're engaging outside of what would be the city's admin realm of legal services, and then maybe accommodations of master plans, plan types, or studies. So we've slated for 27, what would be the downtown master plan. So that's those 2 pieces that you're seeing CDD. As far as engineering goes, professional technical is a bit of a tough place, and we're actually seeing a consolidation where we've reduced the budget down to 0 and consolidated it, into professional technical. what was formerly plan reviews. And so those are both, maybe using the right terminology, not carryover, but pass-throughs. If we're gonna use that.
Yeah, I think one of them, I'm looking at it now. One of them's plan review services, which is passed through. So if we have to pay for outside review, we get reimbursed from the applicant for those things. And that's about a third of the money that's in there. And professional and technical is the other 2/3. And that would be to hire outside help if we need things for our projects that don't fit under, say, like an established CIP project that's already there.
That's right. So that essentially that item has two main thresholds. One is the pass through, one is support services for CIP projects.
Thanks. Kind of similar question for special department supplies, looking at engineering. Going up to 21,000.
I'm sorry, what one was it?
Special department supplies.
Just for engineering, just in general question?
I think just in general, I've flagged it both for CDD and for engineering.
The big one in engineering is the drone.
Right, okay, sorry, we were
Yeah.
on professional technical, now we're on special.
sorry,
department.
I'm-
I'm with you, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm going through my.
Yeah, so the biggest piece in that is we're upgrading our aerial surveying systems, the drone, not only hardware, but the systems and certifications go along with that. So that's the biggest price tag that's being budgeted, but that is a request coming out of engineering that is itemized into that. So we don't have loose general funds in there. Those are gonna be very standard operational itemized elements. As far as CDD goes in special departmental slides, the big increase that we have here is that through the divisions who had previously maintained those funds, we've accommodated and consolidated all three divisions into some of those elements. The biggest being, I'm sorry, let me get up to it, flying around.
Abatement.
To it.
Yeah, I was curious where
Yeah,
abatement.
Thanks.
too.
Yeah.
That will be a different GL code once we work with Danny. So that will bring that item within that particular item to $2,000 is what the estimate would be for special departmental that's consolidated from every other division. But then a major whole item, which is 40,000 for the abatement.
And can you talk a little more about the abatement fund, what the 40,000 would go towards?
Sure. That is not a non-comprehensive budget that we would have, in that when we have a dangerous building code abatement, those are what we've experienced recently, much larger scale, and will have to be budgeted specifically for those. But typical nuisance abatements can range to some more expensive, some less expensive, from $1,000 up to a couple tens of thousands of dollars. So this would basically allocate for maybe three average nuisance abatements, and we have currently a running list. I've got some staff behind me that may correct this number, but about a list of 4 in the queue. These mean they have all legal precedents for us to advance for abatement, but have been waiting for the funds to be there. So they're in line to have us execute on those. So right now we'd probably get through 3 modest, maybe 2 a little bit larger, maybe 5 much smaller abatements. So we're not gonna knock everything out. We just know that, but we do need to move that needle forward.
Thanks. I guess since that's timely and we're talking about it, can I ask questions about us talking about abatement later or?
Yeah.
We'll talk about it later. Later. Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you.
So we're driving on that side.
Of course.
Fast. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Corey.
Thanks.
Next up, Levi, Public Work.
Awesome. Thanks, Mayor, Council, Michael.
Sir.
Danny and I like to present Public Works. There's 8 total budgets within Public Works, so we'll try to make it fast. First, we'll start off with the streets division.
So this again is just the reminder, the 7% for salaries and 10% for benefits. So in the streets department specifically, salaries went down by about 11.5%. This was because we had the departure of a long-term employee. Our long-term employees do cost more money, and so that budget did swing down a little bit. Benefits, on the other hand, did swing up a little bit, and that had to do with employee benefit status changes, as we talked about last time.
Excuse me. This slide represents the last 2 years and the actual numbers, 26 budgeted numbers, and then the proposed 27. Overall, it's a 14.6 decrease from 2026. Some of that is operation, and like Danny mentioned, it's long-term employees.
And I'll just point out too, it doesn't, that decrease doesn't mean that we have deprioritized streets. Class C road funds is also going to be coming up in this. And then also CIP. We have a lot of road projects in CIP. So just want to make sure that's really clear that we're not moving away from maintaining streets or anything like that.
Sweet.
So again, salaries is up slightly above the expected 7%. This was due to the step adjustments, benefits for the same reason.
Same slide, represents the last 2 years of actual numbers, current budget year and then proposed for 26. Overall, it's less than 1% increase from 2026. Notable changes that operational costs increase represent aging equipment in this department over the last 2 years. Public Works admin.
Public Works admin salaries are at 3.4%, which is significantly lower than what we expected. There is an employee who is frozen in this department, which is the reason for that low number. And then the benefits are spread standard where we expected them to be at the 10%.
Overall budget costs for the last 2 years, the actuals, the current 2026 numbers, and then proposed for 27. But this is less than 5% overall increase from 26. Notable changes, similar operational costs from previous years. In buildings and grounds line, we'd like to make some office improvements for the superintendents. Desk arrangements. It's a very challenging space to try to accommodate everybody. So trying to work through those details. Safety.
We don't have any personnel in safety, so I don't have anything to update on that one.
Overall budget costs for the last 2 years, the actuals 2026 budget and then proposed is identical to 2026. So no overall increase.
One.
Nice.
Okay.
I sort of
It's
giggled.
the salary position. That's good. That is good.
Roads fund, Class C. Again, no personnel, it shows numbers for 24, 25. The actuals, current 26 and proposed, 2027. There's a 54% overall increase from last year. 25 numbers represent the overlay on Mill Creek. That's why that number's so high. And so notable changes for this year is increasing level of service, obviously, but when we did that thermoplasty project with Straight Stripe, our crews were heavily involved with that. So we're able to get some very valuable training. And so budgeting for smaller projects that maybe Straight Stripe can do, but so we can take some of that on ourselves.
Great.
Thermoplasty and crack sealing. Small striping project as well as supplying the paint so we can stripe. Replacing light poles, decorative light poles. They're roughly 8,000 a pole. We'd like to have a small supply. And then our salt shed, it blew over a couple of years ago. And so rebuilding that to protect the salt and sand we plow with, or salt the roads after plowing. It's time to rebuild the shed. We're not going to relocate the public works, rebuild public works anytime soon with failing infrastructure. So it's
time.
It's time.
So this budget is funded mainly through two sources. Oh, that's parks. Really quick. And it brings in about $750,000. In the years that we don't spend up to that 750, the money just goes back and builds the fund for the 21 fund. This is not general fund. So we're getting money from Class C road funds and from the transportation tax. And those are come in around $750,000 a year. So what Levi and I did was we're going to spend all of that. We're going to try and get all of that into striping and doing maintenance projects and things like that. This fund also carries a balance, which I'll report on when we talk about CIP, but those funds can also be used to pay for larger projects and things like that. But we don't see any reason why we shouldn't spend the operational funds that are coming in each year with the amount of maintenance that we have. So that's why you see a 50% increase in budget.
So we've talked about doing things like, hawk lights or pedestrian lights, is that out of this budget or would it be out of another budget?
It depends on a couple of things. One, if it can fit into a project, like it's already part of a streets project, it would go in there. If it was something where we already had the street, we weren't doing a project nearby, it could potentially come out of here. It could come out of the fund as well. It could also come out of a general CIP line item as well. So there's a few places that we could take it from.
Okay.
Yeah, grants as well. We should definitely.
Grants for sure. Yeah.
Stormwater. The actuals for the last 2 years, our current budget, 26 and proposed for 27. It's a less than 1% overall increase from 26. Notable changes, we have an issue on 100 west, 200 north, storm line issue we'd like to refund. And then the rest, the increases for detention basin maintenance.
I'll bring up some on that one too. When we talk about CIP at the next meeting, we'll also be talking about storm drain lines because the roads that we're talking about, any road that we're talking about, also looking at storm drain to see if we can address storm drain with those projects, water and sewer as well, and any other things that we can tie into that. So storm drain carries over to CIP as well.
Questions?
Levi, I was really impressed by this budget because I know that we've added so much to your plate in the last couple of years with King Creek and dispersed parking. I mean, so much landscaping to help maintain. Did I hear that housed in the special projects? Where are we seeing that reflected, all that increase and
It's in the facilities budget at the very bottom.
it is part of that special, that 64,000 special project?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Okay.
Yeah, if you'd like an actual
Clarification.
breakdown of what, it's supplies, irrigation supplies, landscape materials, hand tools, those sort of things.
Great.
It also includes that small project for the North Trail.
Yes.
I think that's like a third of the budget.
Great. Thank you. And
Yeah.
nice work. Yeah.
thank
Nice
you.
work absorbing that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Jason?
So is your department fully staffed then after losing that, full-time person then?
So we currently in facilities, we have that open, not budgeted position. So we're down one there. In streets, we spent the last year and a half with some missing personnel and we just filled the 6th vacancy. And that person will start in 2 weeks. So we have a new guy. Let's see. We're going, one individual just passed the 6 month. 2 individuals are still within their 6 month. We have a guy we just brought on board who's been there almost a month. And the last 6th full-time employee is actually an employee from the WRF, so they'll have a vacancy.
Nice.
Yeah.
I know last time we talked a few times about that you're having issues with like CDL drivers and not being able to use like the street sweeper or dump trucks, or whatnot. So is that all been kind of figured out? Yeah.
Yes and no. We have 2 of the 6 are currently CDL holders. 2 of the new that are within the 6 month are all, but they just have to take the final test and they'll be certified. The 5th person we just hired that's within the month, he came with a CDL. And he's not from here. Him and his wife relocated.
He's from England, trying to get him driving on the right side of the street.
Yeah. It's challenging. And the 6th individual from the WRF, he'll need some training. He doesn't have a CDL. So yes and no, we were able to figure it out. But there's some steps we have to take to do it.
Nice. Yeah, cool.
Anybody else? Right, thank you. Caitlin, you had another question you wanted to ask about community development budget, I believe.
I did, I think I missed it, which,
Right.
yeah, thank you, Levi.
Thank you guys.
I didn't know, yeah.
He You've got it together. Everybody.
Yeah, going back to community development, and I guess one of my questions, because I even missed over it, is community contributions, whether that,
Yes. That, that definitely is part of this, not part of community development. It's part of the overall general fund. I'm gonna cover transfers and those contributions at the next meeting when I talk about revenues as well, so.
Okay.
So, so just for information, that'll be all the transfers that we transfer out of the general fund. The money that comes in for property tax, which also goes to the CIP, money that's going to grants and things like that, the community contributions, and anything else along those lines where we're transferring money from one budget from the general fund to another budget. And I'll do that with the revenues.
okay. I guess I'm wondering then if it should be in the CDD budget or,
I think it's more admin, honestly. It's contained in the hierarchy of the budget. It's like right at the bottom of the 10 fund. But I believe that's more of an admin function. And so I've just left it in admin oversight. So
admin makes sense. I guess I will save my comments on that for next meeting then.
Great. Anybody else? Questions on the budget? Very good. Thanks, everybody, for all your hard work in presenting this to us. Really appreciate that. Feel good about our budget this year.
Yep.
All right, moving on to our regular meeting. We first start with public comments. So if you'd like to make a comment, if you could fill out one of these forms with your name, address, and what you'd like to talk about and give it to Michael, that would be great. So far, we have Bill Agee who's going to talk. You have 3 minutes. State your name so we have it on the record.
Sure.
And 3 minutes. Thanks, Bill.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bill Agee. I'm gonna start my timer. Oops, that's 8 minutes. Pardon me. Oh, look, 3 minutes. So my name's Bill Agee and I live on Mill Creek Drive. And over the past year, I've spoken to many of you about the noise levels specific to just Moab in general, but also the street I live on. And I want to thank you for your time and attention to this matter. I'm here this evening to hear what the city council, the mayor, Moab administration, city manager are proposing to address the excessive levels of noise, OHV noise. I realize this is a discussion, but it would be informative to know the framework of your plan, timing, enforcement, key performance indicators, like what does success look like? And contingencies, like what if the solutions that you're discussing don't prove effective? So leadership is also important. So we'd also like to know, like, who's going to oversee this effort? Is it going to be the city manager, the mayor, a city council member? Somebody who I won't say accountable, but can at least be the point of contact for us, for how the project is progressing. And I think of this as a project. Now, I realize that Utah state code makes it difficult, but not impossible to regulate speed on vehicle type. But I'm optimistic that there's a solution that brings the community or the OHV community into compliance with Moab's noise ordinance. Reducing speed is one of many approaches. And hopefully today's discussion will explore multiple possibilities. Now, before I conclude, I just want to remind everybody in a leadership position that Moab prides itself on enhancing, and I quote, our vibrant community and improving our quality of life. And this is what's on your banner right here for your meeting announcements. And so we consider noise control as a critical component of quality of life. Noise is just not a nuisance. As I've mentioned before, it's a pressure wave, a vibration that at elevated levels is harmful to humans. And this is why OSHA has regulated sound at a workplace. It's harmful. And so that cities, municipalities have similarly adopted noise ordinances as a matter of public health, welfare, safety, and quality of life. And if this part sounds familiar, it's because this is the first statement in Moab's Ordinance 2021-7 that addresses OHV noise. This is in your codes. So finally, leaders are often asked to make difficult decisions. The possible threat of litigation is always a consideration. But we, the Moab community, think that our quality of life and health should be given precedence over this concern. And we will support you if you support us. And from a financial perspective, we really want to preserve our property values. Excessive noise diminishes our home's value. So we will protect this investment. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Hey, because you're here.
We have Bill at the card.
No, I know you.
You know who I am?
Yeah, just state it, your name in the microphone.
Okay. My name is Pete Gross, here back by popular demand. Maybe not. I want to echo some of the things that Bill said. First, I want a little bit of history. We're at the 250th anniversary of the formation of the United States. For about 130 of those years, more than half of that time, the Reeves brothers invented mufflers in 1896. So we've had a lot of time to improve and perfect that technology. And just like, we've realized that secondhand smoke is a health hazard, secondhand noise is also a significant hazard. Noise impairs development in children. It triggers the release of stress hormones, particularly cortisol and adrenaline, that even during your sleep, you may not wake up, you don't even know you're being affected, but you're getting these stress hormones released into your bloodstream. I feel bad for Bill Agee because I know he's at ground zero for UTV noise. I live on the other side of Mill Creek from Mill Creek, the creek from Mill Creek Drive, which is a UTV or an OHV thoroughfare up to Sand Flats. And the noise bothers me. I get woken up. What else did I want to say? I'm trying to be quick here. Yeah, I don't need to repeat what he mentioned about the noise ordinance. It's 5 years old now. And I'm wondering, has there been even one noise ordinance citation issued based on motor vehicle noise? Oh, and also, I made a nonverbal comment here too. There's something like 200 to 400 yard signs of this nature. And also, I think there's a couple of hundred of these t-shirts. Did I hear the 3-minute thing?
Not yet.
Okay. Oh, the one last thing I would like to add is, I had a conversation with someone in this room about how the city could be proactive in working with the OHV community. And one of the things that struck me is electric UTVs could be a game changer. They're so much quieter, and whatever company chose to go that route, yeah, they're not going to appeal to everybody, but they're going to gain a significant segment of the OHV, community tourists, and also engender a lot of positive feedback. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have.
Thanks,
Thank
Pete.
you.
Yep.
Thanks, Pete.
Anybody else?
Can I save everybody 3 minutes and say that I stand with these, we live behind Bill on Leverage?
Come on, get in the hot seat, Eric. Come on.
My name's
Eric,
Laura. Kara, who doesn't speak publicly. We live on Leverage, and I would mimic all these things that were said about the same thing. We've been there for 15 years, for 18 years. And it's a very different place living there now than it was. And it's a very different place this week in the last 3 weeks versus what it was in January, when you can actually be in the front yard, because it was 90 degrees in January. But you can't really be in the front yard at night. And we go when the sun sets and everybody comes down from Sand Flats, we go inside and shut the windows and the doors. It's miserable. It's horrible. So that's all.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, we'll move on then to department updates, and Michael's gonna start this
Yeah.
discussion.
I am, and I'm gonna invite our engineer up here, and Corey, are you coming up as well? So we wanted tonight to respond to a request by the city council to evaluate speeds throughout town, and then also talk speeds for vehicles, legal street legal vehicles throughout town, and also talk about the disproportionate amount of traffic on some of our routes that is affected by tourism. So those are a couple of things we want to talk about. We're going to show you some maps and things like that today. There's a couple of things I wanted to go over though really quick. First of all, we have evaluated our code and the state code, and I've gone through many iterations of conversations with people all the way from here, our legal advisors to the state officials. And it's very clear that there are inconsistencies in the state code that cause problems. And those inconsistencies make it so that it makes it so that we have trepidation about enforcing speed limits on vehicles differently. A street legal vehicle is a street legal vehicle, and that's the way the state code is basically saying things. Our code may say something a little bit different. Our code should probably come in line with the state code. We have talked to legislators, like I just mentioned. There isn't an appetite to make any changes to make that more consistent or less inconsistent, or to give us the opportunity to regulate differently for these different types of vehicles, as long as they are street legal. So I wanted to bring that out really quick. So in the city of Moab, what we're saying administratively is our recommendation is, and our operational trajectory, I guess, right now is that we treat all street legal vehicles the same. If they are street legal, there should be one speed limit for those. We do have signs around town that say OHV speed limit 15 miles an hour. And that's another thing I wanted to bring up today. OHVs are not street legal. The sign is inconsistent itself. It is somewhat of a problem with our police department, because the police department pull people over and they say, well, it says right there that OHVs, the term is street legal ATV. And I know that might sound semantic, but the reality is that words matter, and the way that it's proposed or put out there to people really matters, especially if we had to go to court over something. So we are going to talk today about speed limits, about the opportunities that we have on some of these streets. We're going to talk about what it would look like going forward. We are not proposing a big implementation here tonight. This is a department update. We want to talk about it. There is planning that needs to be done. We need to address the 3 E's: engineering, education, and enforcement. None of these policies can be implemented without providing equal resources to each one of those E's. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then last thing, I guess I mentioned it with the 15 miles an hour. Those signs, like I said, are inconsistent with how we interpret state code. And we wanted to say tonight that we are intending to take those down because of that reason. Now, when we take them down, I think we've got some leeway there. It doesn't have to be in the next couple of days, but within the next month or so, we're looking at taking those down. So, all right, I'll turn it over to these guys. Oh, and Lex is on the line as well. Lex is at a Chiefs of Police conference, but he is on Zoom and can answer questions.
Perfect. So the short preamble of this, we're going to break this into maybe three components, including Lex, is the engineering department put together this interactive map. So it'll give us the opportunity, depending on where the council would like to go with this discussion, we can zoom in particular areas with particular information. It is limited. This is not comprehensive, but I think for tonight's discussion will give us pretty applicable tool. So that being said, I think we're going to have Mark generally go over what this mapping system and routes option, which has, well, I'll let him go through all those elements. And then for myself, maybe talk a bit more about traffic calming and the nature of that philosophy and how it can be used to our benefit beyond simply speed limit mitigation or any particular elements like that. And then Lex can maybe contribute to the enforcement aspects of that. So that's hopefully the preamble we can get through. Take it away, Mark.
Okay, so we came prepared, mostly viewing this as kind of an information session. So we compiled a bunch of data that we have and took a stab at designating ATV routes. It's maybe not quite the right word, but we wanted to take some attempt to identify what we thought those routes were. So what this map shows is we have ATV routes. Those are symbolized by either triangles or circles there.
So just to be consistent with terminology, because I just said it was so important. Whenever we talk about ATVs, let's just say we're talking about street legal ATVs. The city of Moab doesn't have any off-road trails that we're going to be talking about.
Yeah.
So we're talking strictly about street legal ATV.
Yeah.
Mark, would you zoom in just as we zoom in, this is gonna populate with more
Yeah.
information, so we might see a little bit more
Yeah.
of what actually is included.
We'll get a little sample there, yeah. And just a little background on these routes that we have designated. These were originally identified, I think maybe 5 years ago now, for another presentation that was like this. So several of these were identified as particular routes that were used by particular rental ATV rentals, and other ones were just ones that we identified as being, hey, we think that they go here. So this isn't terrifically robust. This isn't backed up by ATV counts or anything like that. We're just trying to identify where we think they're going, just for the sake of discussion. And then we think we've identified what heavy use and just sort of generally commonly used ones are. But again, not really based on any particularly robust data or anything. We're just trying to put something on there for the sake of conversation. And then we've got speed limit signs. These are surveyed into here based on GPS data in our GIS system. So if we want to identify speed limits along those routes or really any other street in the city, we can look into that. And then we also have on here all of the traffic counts that we've done. So if I click on one of these little things and we want to look at an average daily traffic on a particular week or two that we would have studied that. For example, this one was done way back in 2022. We could get, put a pin in the number for just what traffic was on that road. So if we wanted kind of a sense of high use roads and low use roads just in general, again, that doesn't break out ATV traffic from general traffic. Then we've also got on here functional classification. We probably don't need to address that tonight, but we've got it on here just because we wanted to sort of make sure we had everything included. Yeah, so that's the GIS data that we have prepared. We show several routes on here. Mill Creek, as it's come up earlier, we've identified as a heavy use route amongst others. So I suppose we could open it up for discussion.
I might jump in with things real quick. So again, as we're looking at this mapping system, the dotted line, those are the city limit boundaries. And you can see that there are some faint white lines. And I think this coloration actually does it pretty good justice for interpreting what we're looking at. But the classification of roads, I think for my end, are helpful in that those classifications of road are typically established by widths of right of way. So they correspond with whether they're signed at a particular limit or not, with higher levels of travel flow, if you want to think about that way. So our main or major collectors, arterials to minor streets, the form of the street will often naturally dictate the level of travel, level of service the road's going to manage, regardless of your speed limit signs. So this is what is corresponding to my set of natural traffic calming. So from some of this data that we have that's a bit more historic to what we've just completed with our dispersed parking and King Creek complete street systems and dispersed parking, I think we could all anecdotally assess there's been a natural calming effect in some of these streets, regardless of their signage. So when we're talking about routes and everything else, I think it does factor into what are kind of historically perceived legal ATV or street legal ATV routes to our natural traffic, how these ATVs may be avoiding some of these traffic routes for systemic circulations like school pickups, workflows, in and out of town, in commute and out commute. So it is truly a systemic system. That's redundant. But when we're looking at these things, we have to keep all those elements in mind that one particular amendment will not have a universal effect throughout, but it will have a ripple effect. So I can talk about that.
And that's what I'm talking about with the 3 E's. So when we talk about street changes, that's engineering. We talk about signage that's education, and then we talk about pulling people over, writing warnings or giving tickets, that's enforcement. So I think the big question is here, do we want to look at some of these routes and consider whether or not speed limit changes, engineering changes or enforcement changes might be appropriate? And the big routes are on there that you already know what the big routes are: Mill Creek, 4th East, 5th West, 1st South, 3rd South, 1st North, Cane Creek, and go on. I think everybody's pretty familiar.
Well, unfortunately, these, vehicles do go by neighborhoods, and there are, like you say, major collector roads that they have to access to get to the backcountry. And unfortunately, I hear them when they go down Cane Creek. You heard people here in the audience tonight that spoke about where they live. It's changed. And so, I feel like we need to utilize whatever we can to help reduce and mitigate the noise on those particular areas where our recreationalists are accessing the backcountry. How we do that, I think that's what we want to be talking about tonight.
Yeah. I'd like to talk about specific routes. I think that's
Okay.
great. I would love to talk about that, the Mill Creek route, the 4th East route. I feel like these are the things. So those 3 A's are especially the engineering and education are the things that we know we have completely in our hands. The enforcement as we're exploring all these things is a little bit more challenging. But I think those 2 elements, and I think that those are 2 of the really heavily affected areas. And this is something, the routes is something that I brought up with recently because some residents of Locust Lane had approached me about having multiple UTVs every day going up looking for sand flats. And so I think, in a way to delineate or designate routes is definitely a need in the community. But I also see, Mill Creek is this great opportunity because we're, as we're exploring that intersection and some other, and the increase of traffic that's going to be coming into town via Mill Creek. I think that's a great way to slow people down and sort of give the feeling of coming into a congested area. And so, yeah, I would love to talk about especially the engineering of Mill Creek.
Well, I think that naturally will come up with multi-use pathway and safe streets for all and all that. And I think it's worth talking about given the 300 to 400 units of apartments that are coming in on Mill Creek. I think I agree with that for sure.
All right, Caitlin,
No.
you continue.
Great, I'll continue. Yeah, and I wish that there was anyone from the UTV business community here. I think that I'm gonna put that off the bat. I really appreciate all the comments from all of you. And we're very aware of that. And I'm also aware that there are 2 sides to this, and it's important for us to be proactive in getting that, which for me is education. And I think having a conversation about, I think we all know that these are the routes. And the next kind of difficult conversation is about what it looks like to designate or not designate. How are we working with these neighborhoods? I think 4 out of the 5 of us sitting up here live on this map as it is shown right now. So we all get it. And so I think that's like engineering and education wise. Those are going to be more of the challenging components with this and with other kind of hotspot areas. So I think engineering is a part of it. I would love to start with education. I think you've made enough comments about enforcement and how challenging that is. And so I think going back to that, reopening those conversations with businesses about what we can do, and us kind of like looking at larger policies about what we can do, looking at engineering about how just increased vehicle traffic and density in this area is going to change the classification and the needs and honestly some of the zoning uses through this entire corridor. So I don't have specific answers. I think for me personally, decreasing Mill Creek Drive, 400 East, like trying to decrease all of our roadways to 20 miles an hour, I think is going to cause a lot of heartburn in the community. If we are going the route of every vehicle, every street legal vehicle driving the same speed limit. So I'm struggling with the idea of rolling back speed limits to try and meet in the middle between vehicular traffic and a lot of traffic moving through this area. Before we consider, like, I think traffic calming engineering will help us guide towards 20 miles an hour. But I think engineering needs to be considered, traffic calming needs to be considered before that. Because otherwise it will be an enforcement issue for everyone that lives here.
Right.
What kind of engineering are you thinking?
I think multi-use pathway, I think, just kind of like street design.
I think what we would do is look at, well, with the Safe Streets for All, we know that we're going to be getting some recommendations. And most likely those recommendations for pedestrians are either going to be around intersections or mid-block crossings. And at both of those places are perfect to do neck downs on the street to slow traffic down. And that's an excellent engineering fix or implement to help slow things down. We can see how it worked out on Center Street. That's a good example of a lot of engineering. But there are things that we can do with striping. There are things that we can do with less expensive projects that could be effective as well. I think you hit the nail on the head. This is and you said it too, it's a system. And you can't just do one thing in a system without affecting other things either positively or negatively. And for us, showing this information, we wanted to get out there that we agree that there is a disproportionate amount of tourism related traffic on these streets. It might be street legal, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't have an impact. And I think my recommendation would be that staff come back with some plans for the highest priority roads in the shorter term, and then look at the larger system in the longer term. And I would suggest, like you did, that 4th East and Mill Creek are high priority. I think 3rd South is a really high priority because it already has implementations of the education, but enforcement is difficult there and the engineering is just not there to support that. 1st South is a lot better because at least there's parking on the street. It's a little bit narrower, but 3rd South is super wide and provides a very comfortable place to speed up. So that's something that we could do to move things forward on more of a shorter term, as opposed to maybe doing an entire master plan. Maybe looking at these in sections of priority.
Miles.
So as someone who's lived on 3rd South and now lives on 400 East, I'm acutely aware of this situation. There are a few comments I wanted to make, which is one, I am very interested in dealing with the speed limits as is on 4th or 400. Frankly, I think a lot of us do we drive 5 miles an hour over the speed limit deal. I know that's fairly consistent amongst people. And so leaving that speed limit at 25, I've seen pedestrian conflicts and otherwise, like, not just a noise issue, but people like to move down 400 pretty quickly into that intersection area where we have a lot of people walking around in that small commercial space. So I think that's worth a consideration. In line with the rest of this, I mean, it makes a lot more sense to me to have one speed limit and to enforce that. And if we're going to have a noise ordinance in regards to vehicle noise, like, that is something our officers should be trained on and be able to enforce. And finally, and this is something that it was a while ago that I discussed this with Tori, actually. But there's a potential understanding that we could be a little bit more lenient with some of our screening and buffering on the frontage for people, so that if you wanted to try to separate yourself a little bit more from the noise than is typically allowed on a frontage on one of these identified heavy use routes, that you would be allowed to do so. And I'm interested in pursuing that as well.
Jason.
This winter I did have the opportunity to speak with some of the UTV people up at the state and some of the groups, and all of them kind of says the same thing, that the OHV sign, is permitting, basically you could have like a motocross bike, going up that road, and you're saying that it's illegal, because that sign's saying OHV, off highway vehicle, this speed limit. So by getting rid of those signs, I think it's a really good start to being able to enforce people who are going too fast, or that it gives our police department the ability to start enforcing stuff, because that off highway sign is actually permitting a group that's not legally permitted to be on the roads anyway and stuff. So I think that cleared up. I think that by making it, whether you split the difference or whatever, make it 20 miles per hour for everybody, so that, because there is that section in that ordinance that says that if a UTV is street legal, it has to be treated exactly like any other street legal vehicle. And that's where we're running into this. And that's where we're running into this. So even if we say UTVs have to go a certain speed limit, we can't enforce that. It has to be the same speed limit for all vehicles if they have a license plate on it. And so I think we need to kind of work within those means. I think I talked to Bill and I talked about it last week, and I tend to agree with Bill a little bit. He said that he was kind of against designated routes and stuff, because it concentrates so much traffic on those designated routes, and those people who live on those designated routes are then bearing the brunt of 100% of those vehicles, and stuff. And so and I kind of agree with that. I do think we can do things in neighborhoods, like Locust, for example, or these other side streets, where you could put up signs that say no UTV access or something. You're not prohibiting it, but you're discouraging it. And I'd like, to see something like that in neighborhoods that kind of kept people off of those neighborhood routes, and stuff. But I think like these first steps, and I've talked to people in the UTV community, and they're like, if you see people going, bust them, like pull them over. We want to see the bad actors pulled over. We want to see people having to live by the rules that you guys have set up for everybody and stuff. So I think there is support within the UTV community to set up these whatever we're doing, and then make it so that all vehicles can do it. So, and I know that also in that code, it also says that a UTV that comes from the factory with the factory equipment on it is legal when it's transferred over to be made street legal. And I think that that's a kind of a big barrier that we got to figure out, is like, have people put aftermarket, mufflers on? Have they made them, they put on ladder pipes and stuff on it? And I think that those people should be cited for that, but we got to figure out a way to do that from, how do we do that within our code to cite those people who have put aftermarket stuff on? So yeah, I think these are all great things, and I think that moving forward with this kind of opens us up that we're trying to get this figured out. And I also think that we need to really kind of push the enforcement of this in these neighborhoods, because like, I think Pete's right. I don't know if there has been a noise related citation ever written, and stuff, because we didn't know. And I think we need to figure that out, stuff. So I think that we need to kind of push enforcement once we get these plans into place.
Any other comments, Tawny?
Yeah, no, I agree with Jason about, designated routes. I just think that funnels everything to the same people, and they bear the brunt. We've been working on this for a long, long time. And um, I think everything we have, um, every little step we have made somehow has been countered. But I think we're more on the right track. I think it's important to remove those signs because I thought that for a long time. I thought if it's a highway vehicle, it shouldn't be on the road anyway. Um, so and I do want to make a comment. I live down on the west side of town, and the Entrada condominiums this time of year fill up like crazy. I mean, there have been years I have counted 100 machines from 500 West to 650 West. I mean, and that's not counting the ones that are parked inside the condominium property itself. And I mean, I've seen guys working on their machines out in the middle of the road and you have to go around them. But in all honesty, when they leave, there is not a giant conflagration. And I've been up at 5:30 for many, many years, and it's not deafening. I don't know what they're doing there that's different. Because I mean, I've sat up on Mill Creek, and yes, it's deafening. You can't have a conversation. So I think greater minds than mine can come up with something to help mitigate some of this.
I'd just like to say too, that like this should be an encompassing noise ordinance. It's not just about UTVs, it's about, big diesel trucks, rice burner, car, or something, like anything loud. There's a lot of loud vehicles in and around Moab that,
Yeah, and I'll say that's why I really think the noise ordinance is a good way to go with this. Because frankly, like you can have a vehicle that has aftermarket pipes and you can drive it in such a way that it does not create unnecessary noise. And you can have a vehicle that has stock tuning on its exhaust. And if you're accelerating and revving it for the heck of it, you're going to make more noise than should be allowed in our community. So I think enforcing it at a noise level kind of solves a lot of the complications of officers needing to know how to recognize whether or not someone has modified a stock vehicle, instead simply if they're compliant with the noise or not compliant with noise.
I think actually that's a big reason why we haven't enforced it is how do you like individually measure one singular UTV's noise source, especially when they're driving by in a group and there's other like I think that is the challenge.
Yeah.
And I know that you want to move on. I guess figuring out how to move forward on this, I think one of my requests, because I'm sure all of you are sitting in the audience teeming with your thoughts on what we're talking about. I'm wondering, I would like to figure out a way to have like a town hall or like public conversation about this. Because I think we all have different perspectives. I'm sure everyone in the audience has different perspectives. Clearly we have some things on the books that, we need to make a decision on how we move on. And I think I would also like to open up the door for other conversations about what the public wants to see 5 years later, how we address this moving forward. I think it's gonna be really challenging for us to be able to figure that out in a public meeting.
Well, I'd just like to say that I feel like the speed limits is a first step. It doesn't mean we have to change all the speed limits to 20 miles an hour, but the routes that we know are designated, that's how they access the backcountry. And I've talked to Michael about this and we need to talk more about it, but I feel if we're going to remove 15 miles an hour, we need to replace it with 20 at the same time. Otherwise, they're going to be going 25, 30 miles an hour. It needs to be very clear. It's not going to help us this spring if we don't do something soon. And if we're going to take down the 15 miles an hour, we need to replace it with something, and it has to be something in between. So 25, 15, we get 20. And I also feel, I understand the whole system, the whole engineering idea. I also know how long that takes. And I feel educational campaign. I don't think we've had a really robust educational campaign. We've had a lot of conversations. There's articles in the paper, but we haven't put out anything. We haven't given our ATV owners and businesses something that says, hey, give this, when you rent out your, UTVs to people, give them this document, go to Entrada and give that out. Leave it in your hotel room where we know those folks are going to be staying. And just get that information out and have a much more robust educational campaign, because I believe we've never really done that. And I really appreciate the idea about the designated routes, because I was thinking, well, we know where they're going to go, let's direct them there. But you're right. If we do that, we're funneling them all into, it's not fair. But we do know 500 West and unfortunately Mill Creek Drive up into Sand Flats is where everybody wants to go. So let's work on those areas and get that taken care of so that we can kind of start to mitigate this as soon as we can. Because as far as next week, it's going to just keep ramping up until the end of May. And I would really like to see us getting something going as soon as possible. I really like your idea, Caitlin, of having, more conversation with the community. I'm sure Bill and Pete would love to be involved in those conversations. And I know this has been a challenge for us, but I think we have a small solution that could help that we should try to implement as soon as possible. And then look at all that engineering. I know we're looking at 400 East as kind of our next big road project. That's when I think we could really do some good complete street work and do that engineering there. So anyway, those are my thoughts. And I think, go ahead. Colin, do you have,
Are you done?
well,
I didn't mean to.
I don't mean
I
to
just wanted
close everything off either. We don't have to
Yeah.
move on. If you have more comments that you'd like to make.
And I just wanted to ask about that. I mean, how can we, so we're about to queue up our next big road project. How can we, kind of move Mill Creek, add that to 400 East as a priority? And potentially, I mean, can we do that?
Well, I mean, it's, we're in planning phases for both of those. So just say the word and, we can present a budget that's consistent with adding it to 400 East.
Yeah, we will be discussing the CIP at our next meeting. So, hopefully that is going to be part of that conversation. But how do you want to move forward with this, Michael? I like your idea of providing recommendations. You've heard what we've all had to say. So can we, in the next, meeting or two, come up with some recommendations so that the public knows that we're moving this forward? We're not just giving lip service up here.
Sure.
We really want to get something done.
So I think we can definitely come back with recommendations, but Lex is on the line and we have another officer here who could both speak to this, but enforcement is extremely important with these. I mean, the ability to get out there, and because part of enforcement is education too. If you're giving somebody a warning, that is education. The ability to enforce and to be able to do it consistently for a period of time after speed limits change are really important. So when we come back, we'll talk about the ability, the resources that we have and all of those types of things. The other thing I was going to say is we'll talk more about the speed limit signs, but as you know, they're prolific. They're not just on routes. All the routes that we're talking about they're prolific throughout the entire city. And I don't think we're talking about changing all speed limits. So we, it is a challenge. There's a lot of things we have to think about, but question was, do you think that we could get something back in the next two meetings? Yeah, absolutely. We can bring the discussion back and have some recommendations.
Good. One thing about the speed limit enforcement also to keep in mind, I think, and I've heard Lex talk about this before, is that if we have the ability to legally and pull people over for going over the speed limit, that opens the door to look at all the other things that these guys are doing. And my understanding is they get some DUIs that way. So, having the speed limit and enforcing the speed limit allows us to maybe do some things that the noise ordinance doesn't capture, that we can do by pulling people over for speed. So more to come on this, you guys. We hear what you're saying. I know it might not address everything that you want, but we're really trying. So we'll be talking more about it here in the next couple of meetings, I hope. Anything else before we move on? Thank you. Thanks, you guys. All right. We have our first item of consideration, which is our consent agenda. We have 4 items: the Arbor Day proclamation, the Dark Sky Week proclamation, the approval of the minutes from March 10th, and the approval of the bills in the city of Moab in the amount of $501,400.96. I normally like to read the Arbor Day proclamation and the Dark Skies Week, but every time I talk, I have to cough. So we all love trees. No, okay. We love trees. So that's what that's about. We love our starry skies. That's what that's about. So if I could have a motion to approve our consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I can second that.
Motion by Jason, second by Colin. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Oh. Okay. I guess my brain's in a little bit of a fog. So our next general business item, I have to open the public hearing. It's item 6.1, public hearing for resolution 06-2026. Resolution assessing abatement costs and fees for the abatement of the dangerous building located at 737 Mountain View Drive, Moab, Utah, 84532. This is a requirement in order for us to put a lien on the property. So I'm going to open up the public hearing at 7:04 p.m. And Michael and Summer, do you guys want to talk about this real quick?
Not really. I think this just allows, like the mayor said, allows us to recuperate the $93,000 that we spent on abatement costs. We would do that through applying a lien to the property. This resolution takes us to where we can do that.
All right. Anybody from the public want to speak to this agenda item? Going once? Okay. Lack of enthusiasm there from the crowd. We will close the public hearing at 7:05 p.m. And then the next item is consideration of the approval of resolution 06-2026. If I could have a motion. There is no, there is nothing on the agenda summary.
If you could just
Just read it off the agenda.
make a motion to approve and
I'll
then
make a
read
motion.
it.
Okay.
I'll make a motion, to accept the city resolution 06-2026, a resolution assessing abatement costs and fees for the abatement of the dangerous building located at 737 Mountain View Drive, Moab, Utah, in the amount of $93,863 and plus interest at 7% annum to be assessed against the city property, authorizing staff to pursue and recover such funds.
Good job.
I'll second.
Yeah, very good.
That?
All right. We have a motion by Jason, seconded by Tawny. Any discussion, Jason?
No,
Gotta
thank
say
you. This
something.
is so good for this community and for this neighborhood to have this moved. It was a long time coming and it's a safety hazard that needed to go away. So I'm excited that this happened. and
Tawny,
That we pursue it.
I agree. All right. Anybody else?
I do want to return to the abatement from earlier.
Okay.
Wondering if, budgeting for that, just want to make sure that that budget, anything that we would do with that abatement fund on behalf of someone's property will always kind of follow this process? Or is it?
It will. This is a legal process required by the state in order to put a lien on a property. And private property is protected. And, we wouldn't be able to do anything on private property without following the process that got us to this point, which included going through court and going through an appeal process and all of those types of things. So it would follow this process.
So I guess the question is, if we are going to do abatements on private properties, as was discussed earlier, in order to recoup that money, we would put liens on those properties.
We
and go
would.
through the same public hearing process,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That was my question.
Yeah, some of them might be small enough to do fines if we felt like we couldn't get where we need to get through that way, get to that way, then we would have the option to do that. But we'd follow this process.
Thanks. Any other discussion? One thing on this, this property is, I'm glad to see we did put money in the budget for abatement, because it did open our eyes as to, we don't have a process or the funding to do this in the future. So took a long time, but I think it really helped with policy. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next up, consideration of resolution 05-2026, a resolution adopting the city of Moab's fiscal year 26-27 strategic plan. Alexi did a great job at our last meeting presenting this. Unless you have any questions, Alexi, do you have anything briefly you want to?
Yeah, I do, because we also have a new staff member. So tonight we have the full version of the strategic plan and a new staff member who happens to be in the strategic plan on page 3, which was a total accident. But
Oh, no way.
Hang on, yeah.
it's meant to be. Okay, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Alex Bayou. Everyone calls me Bell, so feel free to call me that.
So Alex, could you move a little closer to the microphone so we can get it on the
Yeah.
recording?
Hi, there we go.
You don't have to do, you're good. Yes.
Hey everyone, I'm Alex. I go by Val though. So yeah, just really excited to be in the role. And it is true, I am in the strategic plan on page, I think the table of contents. I was in the play this year.
Half the town's in there.
Yeah, I know. I was gonna say, that was
You with
really
the box
impressive,
on your head?
a lot of people. I think I'm in
You
here
have
too.
a little rabbit brush coming out of my head.
Oh,
and
very nice.
slightly set to the right there.
Oh,
But,
yellow, is it yellow?
Yeah, Lexi
Okay.
just yeah, said that over me. I was like, whoa, no way. That's funny. So yeah, super excited to be in Moab. Been here for about a year and really, really excited to be in this role, bringing resources to a community that I have grown to love so much. So yeah, looking forward to working with y'all and happy to answer any questions or yeah, swing by my office. I'm right when you walk in the door, take a right with Michael and Alexi in there. So
Welcome, Val. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, so he'll be working on grants and sustainability and some of the strategic initiatives, like the things in the plan. This year's plan follows track of last year's. It's very similar. It ought to look pretty familiar. I would be happy to answer questions, or if you want any more detail on things, I can also pull the plan up.
Questions for Alexi?
So Alexi, you through this whole process, you've done such a great job of collecting and filtering all of our ideas into this. The one thing that came up in the last meeting that I don't see represented in the active transportation piece was the safety element. We talked about, and I think Miles brought it up, and it was about cameras, lighting.
Yeah, some of that was stuff that we were considering or are still considering for the Mill Creek Parkway. We can include that more explicitly, like to improve like safety lighting or some of those things.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you tell me. That seems like that was a priority. It came up in the strategic plan retreat. It came up at that last meeting. Is it okay for it to not be in here? Is it, should we desire it to be in here so that it is sort of in the forefront? I mean, you tell me what you think. I don't want to.
I feel like it can go either way. It's an easy modification to put it on one of the actions, or those are things that we are working on, as we kind of specifically, we have like that cleanup and repair, flood damage. There will be work on the parkway. So we could also just add it in there if you would like.
I guess I would love to see it added in here so that,
Okay.
especially when then we're
We can
reviewing
include
it.
that in the motion.
Okay,
To include safety elements in the active transportation piece.
perfect.
And it was somewhat mentioned on the top 5 priorities. In number 3, it mentions like the construction projects that implement and support safe and desirable active transportation. So that felt like a hint towards it, but it
Yeah,
could be
but I
more
think it should be
explicit.
an action item.
An action item. Yep. Anything else, Colin?
That's it for me.
Caitlin?
Yeah, I had a couple. So starting with downtown, I think the actions are reflective of the things that we talked about. They feel a little more short term than full next fiscal year. I think you had stronger language in the way that you described the background in terms of like even listing some of those planned enhancements. I think other additional features. Like I feel like you kind of packed in other things in there. So I guess I'm wondering if there's a way to kind of I don't know if it's like rewrite that or kind of reframe the actions in the way that you've described versus kind of like some of the shorter term things that we have listed there.
Like, you'd like some of the things in the background to be reflected in the action list? Is that?
And or when I was thinking about this, I was wondering if maybe instead we just kind of like consolidate that into like actually bringing the downtown master plan into the action item so that we can kind of encompass a lot of these smaller things into a comprehensive downtown plan.
Yeah, and I think some of that gap is we know some of the things that are going to be in the downtown plan, but since the downtown plan is still moving along, as in we need to do the dust study to consolidate it. Don't have the actions from that plan to put in here. But we can include more than is in there currently for sure.
Okay, well then maybe I don't know, run this by the team, but I guess I'm wondering then if we should just actually put the 2017 downtown master plan adoption in our action items.
The 2017 downtown master plan.
Or
I don't think it was actually
Wasn't
adopted.
adopted.
Never
right.
adopted.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It was never adopted, but we're using it.
We're using it to come up with a new plan.
Yes, which is being worked on there. We are trying to get that organized so that we can take parts of that plan, not redo it, but glean what we can from that plan and then get it into a format that the council would feel comfortable adopting.
Okay, then I guess that's my ask is, because yeah, I know we've been talking about that. Maybe my ask is to list that as an action item to adopt a downtown plan.
Sure.
Okay. And then the second one, also related to plans, was in implementing plans or in housing, I'm not sure, but updating the land use code.
And that isn't in there right now because it's going on currently. So I guess it does just depend on the timeline of when it's completed as to which fiscal year it'll actually fall into.
Yeah. Okay. And then I guess I was a little surprised to see updating the general plan. That's a huge.
Yeah, that is kind of
Yes.
inspirational, but Corey made us do it. Corey.
It came up in our last discussion in our workshop. That's when it was put on the table.
I do think there are portions that we could potentially look at on a shorter term, but I totally agree with you. It's a massive thing. But to be honest with you, I know Corey would agree with me on this, is we should have done the general plan before we did the zoning, but we had so many zoning issues that we went ahead with the zoning first. But so I guess the question is, should it be stated like that, knowing that it's not going to happen in this next year completely?
Maybe we just say
State
begin.
differently.
Begin.
Yes, that we begin discussions on implementing a new general plan, something to that effect.
Yeah, I think it was a 5-year process? The last one was a pretty significant,
It'll take some time.
Yeah.
5 years.
Yeah,
Won't even be here anymore.
It was
it could take a year or so.
okay.
It definitely will take a year, and
I'd
it
say,
should.
Yeah.
I'd say leave it, but just to begin the process of implementing or
Yeah.
discussing.
Yeah.
Does that sound
that-
good to you guys?
Very good. Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right.
How do we
Anybody-
incorporate all these changes?
I'll help you
into-
out with that.
Okay.
3 modifications.
Right.
Adding safety on Mill Creek, adopting a downtown plan, or an updated downtown plan and beginning a general plan update.
Will there be a time during this budget process and with this downtown or this top priorities where we're gonna talk about like, I know part of it was like, we bought a bunch of garbage cans, and now we need to buy X amount more, like, you know, do we need to do that? Or we want to continue the sidewalk project, you know, and what's that?
I think that's part of our budget.
Yeah, that's what I'm just wondering.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, as we go forward, we'll start seeing those numbers in there.
You will, and that Alexia and I will work on a way where we can try and tie each CIP project to a strategic plan.
Perfect. Okay, that's what,
Yeah.
yeah. That's what.
All right, so motion.
Take a stab at
Go
it. I move to adopt, resolution 05-2026, adopting a City of Moab fiscal year 2026-2027 strategic plan with the following modifications. Adding safety enhancements to the active transportation. Adding
Adopting a downtown.
adopting a downtown plan to the downtown section, and then the last one would be the
Begin discussions on the general plan. update.
changing the wording to about the general plan to beginning discussions on it.
Very good.
Okay.
Got a motion by Colin. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Caitlin. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Nice job.
Thanks for the great work, Alexi.
Val, you got a lot of work to
Yeah,
do.
well.
Yep, yep.
Glad to have you, Val.
Excited about you. All right, our last agenda item, presentation and acceptance of the fiscal year 24-25 annual audit of the city of Moab. Michael's going to present this. The auditors are online if we need to hear from them. If you have any questions, my understanding is that we had a good audit.
Yep.
There was a few minor adjustments.
Yep.
But other than that, I mean, and Tawny, who's on the audit committee, if you have anything you'd like to comment on, we'll start with Michael, we'll move to you, and then if we need the auditors, they're available.
So each year we perform an audit. This year was no different. This looks at our last full fiscal year. We were issued a clean letter of opinion. I think that's the way it's stated. It's basically, we did a good job. We passed. There were definitely some suggestions that were made by the auditors. I'll just bring up one of those. This is the main one, actually. There weren't a lot of suggestions. And that was to implement procedures requiring journal entries process, a journal entry process that was a little bit different than the way we were doing it before, that provides a better background and tracking of those journal entries when we're changing how we're charging something after it's been charged. And Summer has worked on that. She's already implemented that. That is happening as we speak. We have multiple levels of approvals that we go through. And we think that we are already meeting that one. And that's no different from anything else in the audit. Everything that was suggested, we take a look at. And again, it was just a few things, but we have resolved and we learned from these, and hope that we don't have those same mistakes in the next year. Mistakes is a probably the wrong word, but
Findings.
findings. Yeah.
Well,
So,
and they're always going to find something. I've
That's
never
their job.
heard of an audit that was perfect. So Tawny, do you have any comments from the audit committee?
I don't really. Michael explained it quite well.
Any questions or comments from the council? I'll ask for a motion to accept the fiscal year 24-25 annual audit of the city of Moab.
I'll make a motion to accept the Moab City annual financial audit for 2025,
24-25.
24-25.
Motion by Jason, second.
I'll second.
Second by Miles. Any discussion, Jason?
No, I read it. And it was actually, didn't understand much of it, but I read it.
At least I'm not the only one.
Oh, you're being honest about it.
you must have been sick recently.
Never.
I just looked for like,
Anything.
negative, I was like,
To
look for
keep-
negative words in there.
I
or
know.
something.
Miles, any comment?
Same.
Anybody else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Very good. All right, last up, we have city manager updates and then mayor, city council reports. We do not have a closed session tonight. Thank goodness. And we'll go with you, Michael, and then
Okay.
we'll go around the dais.
Okay, just a couple of quick updates. I was able to attend an UMTRA meeting where the Department of Energy, the cleanup crew was able to talk about where they are in the process. There's a lot of interesting and new and exciting updates out there. And one of them is that the berm is completely gone. It's at level all the way to, or it's at grade all the way down to the river. They're doing a lot of work out there, and they wanted to talk to stakeholders in the community about what ideally the community would like to see remain behind, or how they would like the property left. The Site Futures Committee has done an excellent job in preparing a master plan that I think shows very well what the community's desires are, and that was reiterated at the meeting and talked about quite a bit. So it was a good meeting. Had a great time looking at all the outbuildings and everything. It was a lot of fun. There's some historic structures out there. There's a big box culvert, concrete box culvert that apparently is a historic structure, and we'll have to go to through SHPO in order to take it out of there when they're all done. It also have to be tested for contamination. So we've been doing leadership training with our leadership, kind of working together to learn from each other within our leadership team. We're going to be expanding the leadership training in our with our staff to allow up and coming employees who are looking at potential career opportunities within the city to get a little bit of leadership training to learn more about the city and operations and how to potentially go from being an employee to a supervisor and so on. So we're really excited about that. I announced that last week, and our first class, we're going to have 10 people. We've already got close to double that of the people who are interested in doing it. So it's really exciting. There's a lot of people here who would love to move up and would like to see some upward momentum. So I just wanted to bring that up. We'll be starting that this summer, most likely after budget, so probably around July 1st. Budget is the big thing right now. There's a lot going on with that. However, you saw tonight that we've pretty much gone through all of the departments, parks, recreation, tourism, which doesn't include parks maintenance, but everything else will be presented next week. I'll talk a little bit, not next week, in 2 weeks, talk a little bit more about revenues for all of the budgets, and we'll do CIP, and then really quickly do wrap tax, which will only take a second, and which is its own fund now, and the vehicle fund. And we're looking forward to wrapping this thing up, actually, and we're excited about the progression. I did also attend a wildfire evacuation tabletop exercise, and the county put this on with their emergency manager, and all of the local agencies were there, including the city of Moab. Our police department was there, the fire department was there, the county sheriff, search and rescue, MPS, BLM, everybody was there. And we talked about what would happen, or how would we approach evacuation due to a wildfire, which I'm pretty familiar with in living in Southern Oregon and having to go through a process like this. And I thought that the county did an excellent job running this, and we were able to identify some areas that we could improve on, including shelter and things like that. And so I really appreciated the opportunity to be involved in that. And I can say I have a lot of confidence in our emergency personnel and first responders. They're very good at their job, and they're very dedicated. So the community should have confidence in them as well. And that is all I have for my updates.
Thank you, Michael. Who wants to go? I'll start with you, Jason, because you've
Okay.
been sick.
So I didn't have a whole lot. Last week I had I only had one meeting, and it was a pretty important meeting. It was the airport board had a meeting last Monday on the 16th, and it was basically, the whole meeting was dedicated to picking a new essential air service carrier to propose to the Grand County Commission, who would then propose it to the Department of Transportation. There's four great candidates that put in for it, and the airport board, after meeting with all those guys, and then going over the applications and the proposals, picked SkyWest. And so, and then that went to the Grand County Commission the next night, and they unanimously have also approved for SkyWest. So hopefully now it goes to the Department of Transportation, and they'll review everything, and hopefully, I think is it October 1st, I think, SkyWest will start service to Canyonlands. So they just have the best kind of product, I think, for everybody. And that was all I had.
Thanks, Jason. Tony.
I didn't have a whole lot either. I had my monthly meeting with the mayor, and a grand time was had by all. And I met with some of the museum staff just to discuss the gala and some next steps for the museum. And gala is Thursday night, and there are still tickets. That's it.
Nice. Thanks. Colin.
Okay, on the 16th, I met with the mayor in Miles. On the 18th, I had a solid waste meeting. Couple things happening in solid waste. One, the spring voucher is open April 20th through May 2nd. And then I'm really excited that the composter is actually turning right now up at Moab landfill and generating compost. So that's a really neat thing. And then after the solid waste meeting, I went to have dinner with Team Rubicon. Danny hooked me up with a lot of wonderful City of Moab swag. And so I took it up there, and I had missed dinner. The dinner was delivered early, but they were really excited to get a lot of really neat stuff from the City of Moab. On the 19th, I had a RAP TAC meeting. We touched on this a little bit. Actually, no, we didn't touch it. I'm thinking of something else. This year there were 25 projects. It's a record. I think last year there were about 22 projects. The total ask was about $235,000. We had about $85,000 to give. So it was, again, another really long process trying to whittle that down to all these very deserving events and organizations. I can't say enough about this year's RAP TAC committee. We really have a phenomenal group of people who are really passionate about this community, and it was just a really, really great discussion. I was proud to be part of
When
it.
do you anticipate we're going to see recommendations?
I was surprised that they weren't on this agenda. They'll be on the next.
Oh,
agenda.
okay.
Yeah.
So it should be our next meeting.
Yes. On the 20th, I did a site visit with Team Rubicon. For those of you who don't know, they're working out on sort of the back nine of the Frisbee golf course by the real golf course. The city owns, close to 20 acres out there, and that most of that is completely engulfed by Russian olives. They have this effort cleared, I think, like 4 acres of it. Just incredibly hard work, incredibly good work. That property is absolutely amazing looking now. Just a whole bunch of wonderful ideas floating around on what could be done with it just to sort of maintain it. But I can't thank them enough. And as I was out there and I was talking to all the different agencies that were involved in that, and all of their leaders, the one question that I had was whether the city had been a good partner in all of this and was being a good partner. And every single person, whether it was Cara from Rim to Rim or Clark from the fire department, everybody had the same thing to say, that especially Levi and Mark Matson had just been absolutely amazing. When I was out there, I think they had every chipper from the valley out there trying to keep up with the cutting these folks are doing, and including the city's chipper, and had 2 employees out there, and people just couldn't say enough what a wonderful partner the city had been in these efforts. So that was a really, really proud moment. On the 23rd, I had 51 years old. I had my first jury duty selection. That the first positive from a broken leg. I got kicked out of jury duty. And so then that night I got to go and brag alongside Caitlin and Miles at the Democratic Caucus about all the amazing work that the city is doing and has done in the last year. And people were really, really excited to hear that the city really you know, it was great to see how excited folks were about all the good work that's happening in the city. And then the last thing I want to say is that Jeep Safari starts this weekend, right?
Yep.
And you know, my ask of the community, this is such a wonderful event. It's an event that I love. And it's also an event that probably gives more funding spread out throughout the community. I was a huge recipient of that as the coach of the mountain bike team. But so many organizations benefit from Jeep Safari and the Red Rock four-wheelers, and it brings so many wonderful people to town. So I just ask the community to be tolerant and patient and really embrace these crowds that are coming in this week, because it really has a wonderful ripple effect throughout our community. And then Spring Spruce Up, April 11th, that I'm involved in organizing. And so put that out in calendars. I haven't checked yet if you're registered, Caitlin. But just another thing to put on your calendars.
I heard you were very entertaining last night.
I get really excited about
That's what
how
I
much
heard.
good work the city is doing.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Caitlin.
Yeah, if I may, Colin did a fantastic job. Actually got people to start, you know, with the little instruction.
It was pretty.
Be able to respond, but yeah, I mean, if nothing, heard from a lot of people, what a functioning government. Look how much you guys are doing.
No, isn't that amazing?
So that was really nice to hear. Okay, so from the last meeting on the 11th, I attended a local homeless council meeting. I would encourage everyone to go check out What's for Rent Wednesday. There's a lot on there, including some spots at the Virginian, some low income all across the board. That's kind of the theme of my whole update. And then we also heard a presentation from an organization called Clean Slate Utah, which helps people move through the expungement process for free. There's technically an automatic way to get records expunged, and it's very tedious and difficult. And so encourage residents to reach out to them if they have things that are eligible for expungement. On the 18th, we had a little city housing subcommittee meeting, talking with Johanna mostly about the presentation that task force will give to this body. And I'd say kind of within that theme, there's the task force is working on updating moabhousing.com to tie a lot of these resources together. The county, apparently, we've been talking about doing this dashboard. Apparently, Lisa Jeffers at the county just made one with city data. So it still doesn't have county data. Has city data.
Well, nice of her to do that.
Yeah, which is really nice. So, you know, momentum moving on that. As it were. On the 19th, I had a pretty fun kind of 24 hours celebrating a few projects. On the 19th, went to the 15 cooperative groundbreaking with Michael, which was exciting. And it's just gonna absolutely change that entire
area.
I
haven't been out there in a while.
It's
Massive.
crazy.
It's changed.
Yeah, it's changing. And will continue to change as other side Aggie Boulevard keeps building out. And then that evening on the 19th, I also went to the Red Cliffs grand opening, which was fantastic. I think they did a really nice job. It was nice to see local faces working there. And I think would be really fun to have a retreat there again.
I am advocating for that.
Yeah.
It's not real popular with staff though, but that's okay.
We'll go back to it.
So how does it look? It's because before it was the cowboy kind of theme. What is it, more Marriott kind of theme now?
It's I'd say it's like Western boutique hotel. Like it's very boutique.
Like
hotel.
Jackson, Wyoming.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Let's go out there.
It's
Let's
gorgeous.
go out there.
It's gorgeous. I was highly impressed.
Good.
Yeah, I think that this community uses Red Cliffs for conferences and
Right.
strategic planning and a lot of different events. And I think it really is elevating the experience for us as well to use it. And then on the 20th, I also went to a ribbon cutting for the Desert Soul Villas, which is a county HCHO project. I think with everything going on there, there is just so much housing opening up, so much momentum between city and county. So that's feeling really exciting. We were supposed to meet with the mayor and Jason a couple times, and
We'll get that back
got
on.
sick, so
Sorry, yeah, we've been
Yeah.
coughing for a week, so.
yeah. So I'm
I'm
just glad you're
fine.
better. Yeah. Glad that you're better. That's it for me.
Thank you, Caitlin. Miles.
All right, so I'll keep mine quick because a lot of mine has already been covered. But meeting with Colin and Joette on the 16th. The 18th, I was also part of the Moab Area Housing Task Force meeting. Caitlin covered that one pretty well. We're excited for our presentation for the rest of council. I also went to see Team Rubicon at the site as well as joined them for a dinner. I'll echo what Colin said. That's amazing work, and it's fantastic that we're able to get that here. I am excited to go further with conversations with folks from Rim to Rim and the fire department, and go towards our strategic plan initiative of building a wildfire management plan for our city. That's really exciting and I think really needed. So I'm very excited about that. Had a HASU meeting. A lot of the kind of same stuff from the last one. Their units are filling up. They had one vacancy at the cottages that's already being refilled, a couple vacancies at Victorian, and they've turned a couple of those units and done some updates as they're moving new people in. So they're staying pretty full. And they're moving into a bunch more, another block of self-help houses, which is exciting there. GWISA meeting, this one has a little bit of meat to it. Mostly from GWISA the lake is at 34% and we barely cleared that. They're looking at starting irrigation April 1st. They will be opening up the irrigation wells at the same time they start irrigation. They're looking at a 50% restriction, hands down, across any and all irrigation from GWISA. And they are still expecting to essentially run out of irrigation water ahead of time. It's going to be a super dry year. They are working on their own SCADA program. So we've did a couple approvals there in regards to that. And the thing I really wanted to talk about too is that I think we could partner with them because they're going to be on a big educational push in regards to educating people on the avenues to access the reimbursement for removing your lawn, and like education on what more arid environment friendly landscaping could look like, along with how to, if you're going to have landscaping or if you're going to have a lawn, how to water that in a responsible way this year. There's kind of a running joke of like, we might not need green lawns this year. Like your lawn will make it through the year if it's half brown, but we really need to understand what we're using. 60% of our culinary water used here is irrigation and landscaping. So they want to do an educational push. I know here at the city, we want to do an educational push along the same lines. This is going to be a really dry year. Snowpack for the entire state is way down. Snowpack in LaSalle is way down. We actually have kind of higher soil saturation numbers right now, but a lot of the understanding of that is currently our snowpack coming down. So we're not going to see the same spring runoff we're expecting, or we've had in previous years. So in general, that is some of the major things that have come up. They mentioned that some of the folks from Cloud Seeding might be interested in doing a presentation if we're interested. Yeah, those are most of the significant things that I wanted to mention out of my GWISA meeting. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Miles. I did see today, and this was pretty shocking, that to date, Our snowpack is at 1%.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, that's bad. Michael and I are talking, I'm sure he'll be having conversations with Alexi for us to put some water restrictions in place very soon. I noticed on my way here today, people are already watering their lawns. It's March. We shouldn't be watering our lawns still for another month at least. So I hope that we can get something in place in one of our upcoming meetings in April. So appreciate what GWIS is also doing. Real concerned about our water situation, not only this year, but down the road. And I think we're going to be having some deeper conversations
Yeah,
about
this
that.
is long term.
Yeah. For me, I had a meeting with the Western Energy Alliance. I don't know if you all are aware, but there was a Great American Outdoor Act bill that went into effect 5 years ago. It was funded by a fund called the Legacy Restoration Fund. It did not get reauthorized. So all that money that was supposed to go into improving deferred maintenance at the national parks across the country doesn't have any funding anymore. So I'm working with them to do a video to try to get our Congress to reauthorize that fund. I met with the communications person with the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. They're going to be coming out for the UMTRA event on April 9th. So I'm meeting with them again tomorrow morning to get some coordination. Please mark your calendars for the evening of April 8th, because I'd love for us to have a dinner or something. We'll figure that out, but I'll give you more details. But it'd be great for you guys to meet them. They've really been instrumental in making sure that that project got completed. Let's see. Michael and I met with the county with Mel and me, Lisa, and Karen Feary, who's a subcommittee for the MAPS project with the Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District. We're moving forward with an RFP to put it out with a consultant to do a master plan for the remaining 8 acres at the MAPS project. Met with Jen Sadoff to discuss some issues that we're concerned about with Moab's aging population. There's a lot of people here, myself included, that don't have family, that are now struggling. And we need to kind of start talking about how we're going to manage that. I think that's something with the MAPS conversation we can look at overall aging in place issues that we need to be addressing. We had an LPC meeting to talk about the end of the session for the legislative session. I updated Colin and Miles. Didn't get a chance to talk to you guys. There really wasn't a whole lot that impacted the city this year. I know I've mentioned the bill, House Bill 501, that was going to require us to increase our fees if we got state funding, which we are going to CIB for funding for the water tank. That would have impacted us, but that did not pass. So that's good news. And then lastly, the last meeting I had before I went down was with the Department of Interior staff, Sam Croft and Mike Olson. That meeting was primarily to talk about the Arches timed entry system that, as we all know, went away. We just kind of wanted to get a sense of what the process was, the decision to determine why they eliminated that system. There was not much of a process from what we could tell, to be honest. So we also talked about some of the concerns and the impacts we think that's going to have on our community, what the benefits were. They listened. We'll see where it goes. I think this is something that we need to pay attention to and see what happens next year. They did imply to us that it won't be back. So I think that's something that we need to be thinking about and maybe advocating very strongly for, because as we all know, the lines are already out. We've gotten a letter. I've received letters from tour companies that are already complaining about getting into the park and how frustrating it is. Once they get there, they can't find a place to park. Jason has talked about how he's talking to his staff about how they're going to have to reorganize to do tours. So there's a big impact from that going away, and disappointed that happened, but I think that there's room for us to continue to have that conversation before. So that's it for me.
Can I ask a question really fast? I saw a big semi truck this morning full of sod. Was it going to Rotary Park?
It could have been. Did it?
They've been doing a lot of work over there.
Yes, it did. And it was amazing. No, I don't know for sure. But they're definitely, they finished the concrete at Rotary Park. They're getting close to that if they haven't done it already. Are we seeding or are we doing sod? It's sod. Okay. And is it in?
No, I don't believe that. Oh, man.
But that same guy was going back to get the load for us. though.
You get turned up. I almost flipped around to see if it turned into rotary, but I was like, it has to be. Who else is be getting big truck load of sod? But
It's getting close.
I know all my neighbors cut their grass and turn on their sprinklers this past weekend.
I know, and so.
Yeah.
Come up with something.
I don't have a blade of grass except maybe crabgrass.
Yeah.
I don't have any grass. Well, I do have grass this year. I don't know why, but
I will
it's
have
bad grass. I have to
Bad-
weed. It's bad,
baby grass.
bad grass. I don't water it. Kill it. All right, a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Miles, second by Colin. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.